How's it going, guys? Welcome to the Talk4 Podcast. So excited to have you here today and show you this fantastic episode. Just want to say quickly that episodes like this one and all the ones before and the ones in future are made possible by people who subscribe. Hopefully, just like you. I'm going to ask you today, if you can, leave a subscribe, leave a follow, leave a rating, leave a like or a comment, and just support the show in the little ways that you can like that. It makes a huge difference on my end. And quickly, just want to plug as well. I've taken 30 of the best episodes of this podcast and turned them into a fantastic book that goes into 150 secrets to greatness. Each one of those 30 episodes gets crunched down into 5 of the best key takeaways from the whole talk and turns them into a fantastic book. Highly recommend you check it out. Please support the show by grabbing a copy, either a paperback or an ebook. And I can't wait to show you guys this one today. So guys, without further ado, let's get over to the episode.
Today, the views expressed are my own and do not necessarily represent the views of the Department of Defense or the U.S. Navy. Any participation of mine in this podcast does not imply any endorsement by me, the Department of Defense, or the Navy of any product or service.
How's it going, guys? Welcome to episode 148 of Talk4, the Quickfire podcast, where we ask 4 great questions to unique and interesting people. Behind the mic today is your host, Skupien. That's me. Let me introduce an absolutely phenomenal guest for today. Doug White is going to be answering our questions today. So, Doug, the most important question I'm going to ask you today is just, how are you doing? How's life? And thank you for joining me today. This is going to be a really great episode. I'm super stoked about it.
Louis, thanks for having me on your podcast. Life is great. I tell people all the time that I wake up every morning in Pensacola, Florida, and I look out at the bayou and the golf course, and I think, things could be a lot worse. So it's always a great day in Pensacola.
Absolutely. Well, I'm looking forward to visiting Pensacola. Hopefully one day in the future. It's one of those places that, as someone who's a super keen aviation nut, it's one of those big bucket list ones. So hope to see you out there one day soon. But obviously, anyone listening in who likes aviation knows Pensacola. So there's a bit of an idea there of what you get up to. And obviously, the flight super reveals a bit too. But we always have that elevator pitch before we kick off on the podcast properly. So just a couple of minutes, really, of who you are, what your day job is, and what you get up to day to day. And then we'll dig into all of that on the big scale. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, Louis. So I am, to break it down into 30 seconds or less here, I am a 4th generation Navy. I'm the first officer in my family. I'm from Edina, Missouri, which is a very, very small town in Northeast Missouri. So I grew up around cows and cornfields, but I grew up with the stories from my dad, my uncles, my grandfather of the Navy. And I thought, hey, these guys all seem like they loved it. So maybe I should look into that. That led me to a pivotal moment with one of my high school teachers growing up that steered me towards applying for the Naval Academy. I got in there, I graduated from the Academy, selected Naval Flight Officer, came down here to Pensacola the first time to go through flight school, was lucky enough to select TAC Air or fast jets as it's known in Europe. Went on to the fleet, flew the EA-6B Prowler for my first 2 tours. The first one in my first fleet squadron, VAQ-135, the Black Ravens, and then moved on to VX-9, the Vampires in China Lake, California, doing operational tests on both Prowlers and Growlers. Because I did operational tests and I was the operational test director for Growler and had been to the weapons school, I was selected to be the first training officer of the first Growler squadron, VAQ-132, the Scorpions. And so I transitioned to Growler fairly early in my career and was one of the first folks to do that inside the VAQ or electronic attack community in the Navy. From there, kind of standard career progression, all in Growlers. Of note, I did 3 expeditionary Growler tours, which is unusual and should not have happened, but due to some interesting circumstances, that's what I did. So another tour in 135 for department head, went to Afghanistan for that, came back. Staff tour, Army Staff College, a couple tours of STRATCOM, commanded VAQ-132, again, the Scorpions, and then selected for this job, being Commodore of Training Air Wing 6 here in Pensacola, which I liken to winning the lottery. So we joke that, all of us start in Pensacola in naval aviation, and we don't have the benefit of perspective at the time, so we don't realize how awesome it is until we leave. And then, we find out what real life is, and we always try to get back. So I felt like I won the lottery when I got this job. Here I oversee an organization of about 1,000 people, over $500 million in assets between two different types of airplanes that we fly here at Wing 6 and different training simulators and other training devices that we have here. I make all of the Navy's naval flight officers and air vehicle pilots. So naval flight officer wise, I make just shy of 300 a year across all platforms. So fast jets, big wing platforms, all those things. And then air vehicle pilot, I make the warrant officers, warrant officer one, so air vehicle pilots for the MQ-25 that's coming online inside the Navy, and then also Marine Corps Reaper pilots. So that's kind of a new thing here. We're getting that off the ground, and that's got a bright future here in Pensacola.
Definitely. Looking forward to digging into all of that. It's going to be great. I think one of the things I really want to touch on first of all then, so a fantastic Navy career, clearly gone through all sorts of stuff and you're in a fantastic position now, and I'm sure lots of lessons learned along the way. So that's kind of where we start in the backstory area. So you've gone through a bit of it there, but I'd love to know what some of those pivotal moments or experiences were going through this. So getting into the military, early career, and then the kind of path to leadership to where you are now. What were some of those big lessons learned, any mentors along the way, and yeah, just some of those things that really shaped your career for success?
So when I was reflecting upon this question, I realized that there's kind of, at least in my experience, two different kinds of scenarios that can happen. And I'll give you an example of a couple of them. The first one is pivotal moments, and the second one is the power of example. And so in the pivotal moments category, I mentioned in my intro that I had a teacher in high school that set me on this path. This gentleman had been an Army gunship pilot in Vietnam. And you got to understand, in rural Missouri, service to your country is highly respected. And so this gentleman, he was our chemistry and physics teacher at the high school. And he was always pushing Navy nuclear power, the program there, because there were a lot of bright students. But, when you grow up in a small town, you don't always know what's out there, right? And this was before the internet. That's how old I am. This was in the 90s. Mm-hmm. And you were kind of, it's kind of who you knew and the stories you were told, right? And so he was always pushing Navy nuclear power. One day in the hallway, I mentioned joining ROTC. And he said, why don't you just go to the academy? And I said, well, gee, I think that's pretty hard. And I'll never forget what he said. He goes, I flew with West Point grads in Vietnam that were dumber than you. You can make it. So that pivotal moment, he was not a man that minced words. And later on, he also never really spoke that much about his service. There was a couple of little vignettes he dropped, little anecdotal things he dropped along the way. But I saw the man's shadow box after I graduated high school. Silver Star, Bronze Star, 3 Purple Hearts, multiple Distinguished Flying Crosses, had been shot down 3 times in Vietnam. He knew what he was talking about. And so that was a pivotal moment. I still remember I was in the hallway. There was a conversation in the hallway. And that conversation in that moment is what set me on this track of my entire life, the academy, the Navy, et cetera, et cetera. And so that's, that's a pivotal moment. Another one happens when I was a young officer. I was a lieutenant junior grade, my first squadron, VAQ-135. Like I mentioned, we were flying the Prowler at the time. The Prowler was kind of at the end of its lifespan, had some challenges with fatigue life to the wings, some engine problems. And so my squadron was in a dip at the time. We had virtually no aircraft to fly due to the wing issues. We had just gotten back from deployment. We were in kind of a down spot with personnel transfer and turnover and things like that. And so this was all new to me, and I was getting jaded really about my experience in the Navy thus far because I was not experiencing what I had imagined that I was going to do right in my career. And it was late in the day. I was working on my ground job. I think I was the NATOPS officer at the time. And so I'm sitting in an office doing paperwork, typing on a computer, thinking to myself, yeah, this isn't what I joined to do. And we had a brand new department head that had just shown up in the squadron. And he stopped to talk to me. And he asked enough questions that I sort of unloaded, to him. And his name's Chris Middleton, and is a mentor of mine to this day. But he took the time to listen to this, just a junior officer, and he provided perspective to me, to explain to me where I was in terms of experience, and what I was experiencing, and how this was kind of a normal thing in squadrons, went in ups and downs and that sort of stuff. And not only that, but he took the time to counsel in an informal setting to describe to me what the future would be like if I sought out the hard jobs, if I sought out the difficult assignments inside of the squadron, being a NATOPS instructor, et cetera, et cetera. And I still remember that because that was the pivotal moment that sort of put me on the track to success inside the Navy, right? So the first one got me in the Navy. The second one put me on the path to success inside the Navy. And so those are two kind of pivotal moments in that category. The other one that I'll talk about, and this is by example, right? My first commanding officer, Pat Walsh, had a saying that whether or not you stay in the Navy is dependent upon your experiences during your first tour. And while I think it's a pretty profound statement, and I, by and large, that's pretty much true. The other thing about him is that he, as a commanding officer, he made it look fun, and he made it look rewarding, and he made it look like, at the end of a 20-year career, that would be the most pivotal thing you could do. And so just by his example, right? So I was, and he was my CO for a year and a half, and just little things that he would do here and there, taking care of people, making sure that the JOs, while we're being kept in line, the junior officers were also allowed to spread their wings a little bit and have those great experiences. And because of that, he made me want to be a commanding officer. And that's an important thing because it's important to have goals in life, right? And so having goals in life lets you endure a lot of other things. And so those are a couple examples that really stick with me, both those, acute examples, and then also the power of living and being an example to others.
Yeah, good ones there. I really like it. So I've actually, over the last few episodes and significant few episodes, I've spoken to a lot of people who are commanding officers, and listening to you there just got me thinking, actually, I don't really understand what the process is there. So when we talk about the rescue wings, I've spoken to a lot of command chiefs, a lot of commanding officers, and I don't think I've ever asked the question how they actually properly get selected and stuff. So what is the selection process there to get selected to be a commanding officer of anything, any air wing or fighter wing or rescue wing? Or how does that work? And what's kind of the process there? What do you need to hit? And if you want to lace in any advice there for setting yourself up for that too, and being a really great candidate, that'd be great as well, I think.
So I can speak about the Navy. The Air Force has a slightly different process that I've only sort of looked at tangentially from my 2 tours at STRATCOM, watching Air Force officers going up and trying to screen for command and things like that. And frankly, I don't completely understand their process, so I won't talk to it.
Sure.
I will also say that inside the Navy, we have many tribes, as we call them, I guess, inside Naval Aviation, even different communities. So different aircraft have different communities. There's, the fighter community, electronic attack community. There's the maritime patrol community, and the helicopters, community. And each one of them has slightly nuanced differences. But by and large, in the Navy, I'll start at the command screen and work backwards. So the command screen happens around the 15-year mark. You looked at command technically 3 times, a below zone look, an in zone look, and a above zone look. The Navy rarely, in fact, I don't think I've ever seen it, that anybody gets selected below zone. So you're assigned a year group when you come in based on where your lineal number is. So your relative seniority amongst officers, right? And that's based on when you get commissioned. And so they can move your group zones around based on populations in different groups, and how many people get out of the Navy or stay in, et cetera. So a lot of background detail here, but So you go up, you get looked at 3 times. By and large, most people get selected in zone. There are some folks that get selected above zone, but the majority of them have them in zone. So let's back up from there. You have to be successful at your department head tour in order to have a fighting chance at selection for command in naval aviation. And so you ask yourself, okay, well, how do I be successful as a department head? And sometimes we kind of joke and say that it's luck, and that has to do with the way the fitness reports, essentially your evaluation, are scheduled in the Navy. We have regular periodic fit reps, and then we have fit reps at changes of command, so change of reporting senior, essentially. So those are your 2 opportunities to get rated in a superior fashion. And so what makes you successful as a department head? Well, the department head, in my opinion, is honestly the most difficult tour in your career. It is something that you've got to want and you really got to dig in for. It is a lot of 12 and 14-hour days, if I'm being honest. You are running a department inside the squadron. So many of those things, whether it's ops or maintenance inside the Navy, are like running miniature squadrons. And you're kind of being evaluated on your ability to do that. Commanding officers vary about how they look at their department heads. Some sort of just let it go, Lord of the Flies, and the strong survive. Others do more mentoring with their department heads, and they evaluate from there. But the keys to success as a department head are probably, having foresight, being able to look ahead, being able to anticipate challenges, overcoming those challenges, and doing innovative ways. You absolutely have to be an expert in the aircraft. And the best way to ensure that happens is to ensure that you go to weapons school. So I tell all of my new wingers here on their checkout, I kind of give them an example of why they want to go to weapons school. And part of that is to alleviate the load during department head. So I put that bug in their ear right before they get their wings. And I tell them, if you don't remember anything else from this, remember that going to weapons school is a good thing. And so that backs it all the way up, right? So if you go to weapons school, you're going to be a training officer for your dissociated tour. You're going to do some sort of production tour during your shore duty, and then in your first fleet squadron, you're going to want to excel there. So they call that the yellow brick road inside the Navy, but that's how you have your best chance of being screened for command in the Navy. There are other ways to do it, and others have done it in different ways. But there's kind of a tried and true way to do it, and that's the yellow brick road.
Yeah, definitely. You spoke a little bit about 12, 14-hour days there, and I think that's quite interesting because I've found that doing my ventures, so I work at a job pretty much full time now. I do the podcast, I do the filming and documentaries and aircraft that I make as well. Lots of things going on, and I just don't think I'd be able to survive doing all this and make progress of it without doing 12, 14-hour days. And it just gets me thinking then, so whether it's in the military doing this or whether that's in entrepreneurship or business, sports, things like that, do you think that's one of those big keys to success, those long days and being able to put those hours in consistently all the time? Do you think that's what sets people above the rest to make the difference between just being part of it and then being in command? Do you think that's one of the big ones there?
I think, and I'll touch on this later, but one of the other things I tell the students that are about to be winged here is I tell them, welcome to the profession. This is a profession, not a job. If you wanted a job, there's other places to do that, but this is a profession. And so to be successful in this profession, you have to be a professional, right? And so lots of times I think we use words colloquially, in speech, and we don't really think what they mean. We don't think about what they mean. And so being a professional means that, you sort of, I won't say dedicate your life, but that's a main thrust of your time and energy. It goes towards learning your profession. And initially there's a lot of learning to be done. And it takes time to learn. There are those, and it varies by person. There are some folks that just seem to pick stuff up easily, and that there are those that grind it out. And they can both be equally successful. But that investment has to be made in your profession. And so whether it's, any sort of entrepreneurial thing or getting your feet underneath you in the military, I think you have to be willing to make that investment. I won't say sacrifice, although, there's only so much time in the day. So I also encourage them to not waste time in their day. Be better at planning what they do, right? And so that you can extract everything out of the day. Make investments in yourself, which is really what it is. You're investing in yourself. So it's an essential part of success, I think, in life, honestly, no matter what your vocation is.
Definitely. Completely agree there. I really appreciate the insights there. So let's get into a few more of them then. So Commodore of Training Air Wing 6. So everything you just spoke about, you got to go and do, and you got that role. So clearly you're very experienced and versed in exactly what it takes. So you lead the training of 275 naval flight officers and air vehicle pilots each year, alongside a team of 160 flight instructors and staff. So in that, what are some of the key leadership principles you emphasize to ensure that these future air warriors are not only well trained, but also able to thrive under pressure and uncertainty? So how do you get them up to speed? What are the big ones there that we can take away from it?
So when I spent my year with the Army at Commander General Staff College in Leavenworth, I realized that the Army is really big, and the Air Force as well, very big on doctrine, right? So they publish their doctrine, they write about doctrine, they have all this doctrine. The Navy really doesn't. And it influences, and I think it really kind of comes out of, wooden ships and iron men, as we say, where, a captain was handed orders, given instructions not to open the orders until they were out of port, right, for operational security. And this is even back in the times of the age of sail. And you went over the horizon as a commanding officer and you opened your orders, and there was sort of just general intent in there, right? It was, hey, go to this area and interdict shipping, or, go to this patrol box and do your mission. It didn't explicitly tell you how to do much of anything, right? It just gave you a general direction and sent you there. So that decentralized command it's a part of the Navy, frankly. It's a part of our consciousness in the Navy. And with decentralized command comes this individual initiative that is grown and fostered inside the Navy, and especially inside naval aviation. Because when you think about, a mission in an aircraft, it's like having a tiny little ship that goes over the horizon to do those things, right? And you're there to do your mission. And there's going to be things that happen there that you have to make decisions about, whether you're the aircraft commander or the mission commander. And you're going to have to make those decisions. You're the senior officer present. And you could be a lieutenant junior grade when that happens. So that's woven into the fabric of the Navy. And so I would say, in one sentence, decentralized leadership that's empowered by individual initiative. Okay. So there's some things about decentralized leadership, and there's some things about individual initiative. And so if you're a leader, and I've learned this as I've climbed higher and higher in the leadership hierarchy, when I was an department head, when I was the maintenance officer, right, I had the majority of the squadron work for me in the maintenance department. And I had several chief petty officers and a master chief that worked for me and some other things. And I learned pretty quickly that there's no way that you're going to know everybody's job. There's no way that you're going to know every single publication and everything else, chapter and verse. You rely on those folks to know that. You have a team of experts that works for you. And you need to empower them to get the mission done, because you're not going to do it yourself. So I quickly learned the power. Really, it's a force multiplier, and people don't understand that. Sometimes people are scared. Sometimes people are kind of timid about letting that happen, but you got to have the faith in the people. and you got to turn them loose. Now, that being said, you do apply bounds to it. So I also learned in one of my staff tours at Stratcom, I worked for a great guy named Calicut, and he was a retired F4 and F-16 fighter pilot that now, ran the J-8 at Stratcom. He was very, very good at giving mission type orders, as we say in, as I say in the Army, which are pretty much the only type of orders we get in the Navy. But he would say, hey, I want you to go do this thing, and I need it done by this time. And sometimes he would give left and right limits. So what I learned there from him was, if you're a leader, you give commander's intent, right? You give them a goal. This is what mission success is. I give you a timeline, right? It needs to be done by this time. And one of the more important things is the left and right limits, right? Hey, go do this, but don't do this or this, right? Keep it inside this lane, and go do this. One of the things that commanders often forget is the timeline. And so I have told, once I learned that from him, when I had my squadron, I told my department heads, hey, if I tell you to do something and I don't give you a timeline, like when you come away from a conversation with me, if it is not clear in your mind what the goal is, what the timeline is, and what your left and right limits are, I have failed you. And remind me that you are unclear about one or all of those things, which is a reminder to me that I need to slow it down and I need to be more explicit in my tasking to you. And that means I've failed them as a leader. So if you keep that in mind, right, that's what you owe to a subordinate as a leader, right? You owe them those things. So keep that in mind as you get, in charge of more and more people, as you climb the hierarchy. So that's what you as a leader owe. On the other side of things, they have their own individual initiative, right? And there's some key things that go into that. The ability to think critically is absolutely key to that, because they're going to have to solve some of their own problems. And part of solving a problem is analyzing the problem, right? And thinking critically about the problem. They're also going to need to be technical experts, right? Commensurate with what they're working on, right? And sometimes they may not be the expert, but they need to know where the expert is, and they need to know where to go find the answer. Okay. And sometimes that's a person, sometimes it's a book, sometimes it's a regulation, right? They need to be familiar enough with that stuff that they can go search out the answer for that. All those things together allow them to roll the problem over in their mind, look at different avenues of the problem, if the frontal assault's not working, that sort of stuff, and you'll get out-of-the-box solutions. They also need to know the rules and regulations so that they may come up with an out-of-the-box solution, and then they okay, great, but you need to run it past the rules and regulations. Can I legally do this? Is it that sort of stuff? And then. And this is another absolute critical part of it. You as a leader need to be okay with how they solve the problem. Okay. And this is another critical thing that I see leaders do sometimes, because maybe in their mind they think, okay, well, I would fix it like this, right? They have something presupposed in their mind about what the solution should be. Their subordinate will come to them with a solution to the problem, and sometimes maybe they already put it in action, right? They already did it. And the absolute worst thing they can do in that moment is say something bad about the way it was solved. So as a leader, you have to be very careful what you say, because that person is very proud of what they've done. And as long as it met your intent, you need to take that and accept it and go on. If you do not, you will absolutely kill personal initiative within that person and potentially within your entire team, because the rest of the team's watching to see how that went, right? So that's another pivotal moment where you can staunch your team or you can grow them. And so you need to learn to become okay with what the solution is. And maybe, hey, going forward, maybe you provide a little bit more guidance, right? But you absolutely cannot quash that individual initiative, because then you can't be decentralized and you can't unleash the power of individualism within your organization.
I like it. There's some really good stuff to take from that for sure. So if we go into a little bit more about that then. So if we look at training Air Wing 6, so you guys fly a couple of interesting airframes. You fly the T6 Texan, you fly the T45C. So when you have these people coming through to train on them, if we talk a bit about high performance maybe for a minute and the mission of the wing, how do you kind of get these instructors and students to kind of maximize the opportunity really to fly and utilize these training platforms then? So obviously it's a place to put in the reps, get trained up and maximize their skill. What are some of the things that go into maximizing that then? So any big ones in terms of the training, mentality, what goes on for them outside the jet? Yeah. So how do you kind of foster that high performance culture and get these people really up to speed on the platforms?
Right. So there's a couple of things we encourage. It's the critical thinking, the problem analysis, that sort of stuff. Those are operational risk management principles that we teach in the Navy, as well as crew resource management type principles that we teach in the Navy for solving those problems in the cockpit at the time. Right. So they get their introduction to that. Right. The mindset. We help them sort of grow with situational awareness. Both mentally and I guess sort of physically, in the space around them. So I joke with some of the new check-ins. I tell them that by the end of flight school, when they drive down the interstate, they're going to know what cars are around them when they're driving. And they may not pay attention to that now. But when you get in the aircraft, you have to develop that air sense to know where the other aircraft are in your formation. Know what the mission is well enough to anticipate actions based on that. So we help them grow in that sense. One very, very interesting thing that we are starting as a prototype here at Training Wing 6 in Pensacola is Sinatra itself, Chief Naval Aviation Training. So my boss in Corpus Christi, the headquarters down there, we are launching a prototypical human performance program. The Air Force right now has been after that for about 10 years with their programs. And so we have taken notice in the Navy, and we are investing time and energy and some funds into getting some Navy professionals here in Pensacola. And we're looking at rolling the same thing out in Corpus Christi to act as a southern hub for the wings down south in Texas. But up here in the Pensacola area, of course, we got ourselves Wing 6 here at Pensacola. Wing 5 is up at Whiting Field, about an hour from here. And then Wing 1 up in Meridian, Mississippi, about 4 hours away. So we are endeavoring onto a program to have those medical professionals here. So this summer, we should have a sports medicine doctor here. We should have a physical therapist and a clinical psychologist. So we've divided it up in a couple domains: the cognitive domain, the physical domain, the spiritual domain, and so how do we engender peak performance out of somebody? Right? For a long time, we've known that we have to lead the entire person, and what I mean by that is yeah, there's all the stuff at work, but everything at work is underpinned by what happens at home, and so we get into and some call it intrusive leadership. I call it as just leadership of the entire person, right? Because you should care about what's going on with people's lives, right? And not to be completely intrusive about it, but if they don't show up at work ready to go every day because, they were up all night with the new baby, or, somebody's sick, or, whatever, they've got their mind elsewhere. They've got an aging parent, perhaps, something like that as we move through the different stages of life. You need to talk to them about it. You need to see where you can help potentially. And in naval aviation, we learn to compartmentalize a lot so that we can carry on with our mission and what we do. And so we teach the students the beginning stages of how to compartmentalize and put that into your mental toolbox of being able to do. So I'm really excited about this human performance effort that we're getting off the ground here. We're taking the best practices from the Air Force. There's interesting things like certain physical tests you can do that directly sort of predict your G tolerance, for example. And then, okay, great. Here's my diagnostic on that. How do I improve that, right? And so specific physical workouts that'll allow you to do that. Mental cognition training that might allow a operator that, like, for example, a E2C Hawkeye NFO, right? Looks at a display. Everybody looks at displays in aircraft, but little cognitive things that would reduce reaction time of seeing a symbol on a display and then prosecuting the target, right? So we're getting into all that stuff. How do we make a better aviator? And so we're gonna build on that and grow that, and hopefully it makes its way out into the fleet. There's a lot of interest out in the fleet as well, so we're gonna serve as the prototype for a lot of the things here.
I really like that.
So that's
good.
Yeah. So we're getting after that here. Otherwise, there's just the time-honored things that I talked about: the compartmentalization, the building the air sense, like I talked about. A lot of it just comes with time and experience, and you got to get flight hours to do that. And so we're constantly also looking at the syllabi that we use here. We have several different training pipelines here at Wing 6, which makes us kind of unique. And so we have several different syllabi that we use. We have some external pressures too, training devices, things like that, that are aging, and there's challenges involved with that. There's challenges involved with the weather and everything else. So, it's a dynamic game that we play every day, and we win.
Nice. So what does Pensacola feel like then? So from someone across the world here, it seems like a pretty magical place where a lot of cool stuff happens. Obviously the Blues are there and you're there doing all this cool stuff. So I don't know, tell me all about it. What does Pensacola feel like on a day-to-day basis? What's the buzz and the energy around the base? And what's it like to work there day to day?
So the great thing about the base or Naval Air Station Pensacola is that it's a training base, right? But it's called the cradle of Naval Aviation because it was the first naval air station, essentially. So the first aviators were trained here way back in the 19 teens, right? And so has a very, very long history in association with naval aviation. The National Naval Aviation Museum is here as well. So we have this entire continuum of brand new, bright-eyed students that show up at Naval Aviation Schools Command, where everybody starts inside of naval aviation. So you have all this useful energy that comes in, all these wide-eyed second lieutenants and ensigns. And then you have everything from that to the docents that at the museum that volunteer their time that are retired Vietnam, Korea, even World War II aviators. There's a docent over there that flew Catalinas in World War II, and the amount of just the history that is here, you can feel it. It's palpable when you come onto the base. Naval Aviation Schools Command has a great program with the museum as part of the training. As they go through there, they go over to the museum and they look at the artifacts. And I say artifacts because that's what they are. They're almost like totems, really. For example, the museum has Neil Armstrong's flight jacket over there. They have grade sheets on Neil Armstrong. The man landed on the moon when he was in flight school, failed a flight, and the instructor basically said, "Yeah, I don't think he has what it takes." Right.
That's great.
But they show this to the students, right, as an indicator of, like, everybody has bad days, right? The difference is, what do you do on the bad day? Do you get back up or do you let it roll you over, right? And so we teach them to get back up on their feet and keep moving.
Nice.
As you can hear the jets taking off in the background, right? So the Blues are here as well. We share the hangar with the Blues. People ask what that's like, and I say, hey, it's like having a roommate that works a lot and is gone a lot, right? But you keep the lights on and you make sure that none of their stuff gets stolen, right? So and that's kind of what it's like living with the Blues here. We're very fortunate to have them here. They practice several times a week, so that's a huge attraction for folks here in the local area. Pensacola is great. Pensacola is absolutely magical. I love it here.
Nice. Yeah. This only ever happened once before, but I can definitely say that a jet in the background will never be an unwelcome interruption to a podcast episode. That is always welcome on here. So let's talk about one of the previous roles then too. So one of these roles that obviously laid the foundations for the leadership that you're employing now into what you're doing then. So previous role, Director of the Joint Electromagnetic Spectrum Operations Cell at US Strategic Command. Wow, that's a mouthful. So you led a team of highly trained professionals in the critical area of modern warfare. How has your experience in electromagnetic spectrum operations influenced your approach to leadership and decision making then? So particularly in the high tech and the high stakes environments then. So yeah, give us all the nuggets you got on that.
Okay, so as a IMSO, as we call it now, electromagnetic spectrum operations, it's the new doctrinal term. So as a professional that works in that realm, my entire career, first in mostly electronic attack, and then as we got Growler, we moved more into electronic surveillance and some other things. What you learn is that the spectrum underpins everything in modern warfare. And when you realize that everything touches the electromagnetic spectrum, you sort of realize that you're a critical enabler for mission success, right? Your ability to manipulate the spectrum, your ability to deny the spectrum or disrupt it, or protect it, right, is an absolute key enabler for success. That sort of mindset also transfers to any sort of organization that is also trying to achieve a goal, right? There's always, to use some sports analogies, and I'm not a big sports guy, but most people can understand these. There's always the quarterback. There's always the wide receiver or the running back that scores the touchdown, right? In aviation, there's always the bomb droppers, right? There's always the fighter pilot that scores the kill. And that's the end result, and people see that. What they don't see is everything that happened before that. The tanker that had to be there to pass the fuel to those bomb droppers, the strike aircraft, and whatever else. They don't see the electronic surveillance aircraft that was out there prepping the battlefield days and weeks in advance, right? In a football analogy, there's the linemen, right, that are up front, the blocker, the block that had to happen for that running back to make it in. There are critical enablers in every organization that do things that ensure success. And so what I have learned in leadership is those folks generally get very little recognition. And they could be okay with that, but that doesn't mean they don't deserve it. And so something that I have learned is to always go look for those critical enablers, those folks that do the thing that ensure mission success, and make sure that they have what they need to do their job. Make sure that they're being looked after. Make sure that they're being recognized. Because again, going back to my previous comments, that's what goes towards individual initiative. When somebody feels appreciated, they're going to go out of their way to do things. That's when you're going to get that war reserve mode, as we call, on a piece of equipment. That's kind of how you get the extra mile out of somebody in a moment when you need that. There's a saying in the military, you can't surge trust. And that's true. And you have to invest in your people every single day, and not just the quarterback and the running backs and the wide receivers. You have to invest in everybody. And you have to go find those critical enablers and make sure that they're not being forgotten about, because the moment you forget about those folks, you're going to fail. And so that's one of the big things that growing up inside of electromagnetic warfare has taught me, that I've really kind of transferred to leadership.
Nice. I'd really like to just quickly talk about exactly what that is then as well. So just to kind of highlight some of the innovation there as well, but can you maybe share a couple of the insights on maybe how the Navy's integrating electronic warfare into the pretty broad spectrum of operational strategies, and kind of what the future maybe is going to look like for this area of combat? So any kind of key pointers there, bits of info we can take away from that too, just for the interested and very keen mind.
So I'll keep this very broad brushstroke, but I think the Department of Defense, writ large, is starting to realize the importance of the spectrum, and that's nothing new. That's in the last probably 5 years. There's been a large, there's been many things said on that by people who are very senior to me. We are doctrinally sort of getting our act together. The Joint IMSO Center has been stood up at U.S. Strategic Command. So that's the JEC. It has a really large mantle of running things for DoD inside the spectrum. Individually, you can see things inside of different services. So when I was at Leavenworth back in the 2014 timeframe, the Army was bringing back one of their branches, the electronic warfare branch that they'd done away with in the 90s. The Air Force has started a spectrum warfare wing down the road in Eglin, right, within the last couple of years. So there is this awakening that's happening writ large throughout the DoD, and that's heartening, frankly, as we've lived in a very permissive environment for the last 20 years in the U.S. military, and I think folks are realizing that things are about to change, and so we're moving towards being able to maneuver in that space, right? So, and again, it underpins everything, and so there's a lot of time and energy being put towards that in all the services right now, with a lot of different initiatives that are out there.
Nice one. So then, rounding off all of that, back to the people who really you're kind of serving now, almost really these young guys, young gals who are coming in, looking for that guidance and trying to find their way either into command or even just into the fast jets or whatever they're looking to do within the Navy or the Air Force and stuff. So everything that you've kind of highlighted there, all those key takeaways and stuff. So what's the kind of big advice or message you want to sort of give to the young professionals aspiring to enter military aviation or defense strategy then? So maybe highlight some of those key skills that they should focus on early on to develop to succeed in their individual fields. What are some of those morals maybe? And just what's the kind of checklist for doing really, really well and big things within the industry?
So, there's kind of some underlying traits and qualities that, if they have them, great. And if they don't, I think it'd be beneficial if they developed them. And I think the first one is, in the military, you need to be driven to serve your country, serve your unit, serve your subordinates, right? And so I'm a big fan of servant leadership. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek and sort of what, Leaders Eat Last. That book's pretty pivotal. I ask all my commanders to read it to give them some insight. That drive to serve is going to help carry you through the difficult times that you're going to have in your career, right? Because it's not about you, it's about a higher purpose. And when you're driven to serve a higher purpose, you can feel a sense of obligation. You don't want to let your team down. You don't want to let the country down. And sometimes, when you're obligated to something else, it helps you carry through. Grit, as they talked about, West Point did a study to figure out, what's the secret sauce that lets people get through a service camp, and they figured out it was grit. You don't quit, right? And so having that in your personality is a key thing to get you going. I talked before about it's a profession, not a job. We call it the profession of arms, right? And being a professional, and to be a professional, you have to constantly learn. You have to have this hunger for knowledge, right? Like a curious attitude. Well, why is it we do that, right? What are and being a little questioning about things too. I tell them all the new aviators coming through here. I tell them to question the status quo. Okay. There might be a very good reason why something is the way it is. We have a saying in Naval Aviation that it's written in blood, right? Several of our regulations are because somebody was killed or injured because of it. And so it's important for them to learn that so that they understand the seriousness of it, the serious nature of it. And it's important for them to question the status quo because you know what? There are also things that are just, I don't know, it's always how we have always done it, right? But that doesn't mean that's the way we need to continue to do it. And so I love young officers because they bring a energy to the organization and to the team that it helps old guys like myself remember what it was like to be a young aviator, right? Harness all that. Leaders can help themselves out by harnessing all that and be like, okay, cool. Well, you don't like this? Sweet. Tell me why you don't like it and how you would fix it, right? And so that's another key thing that you can teach folks. There's a lot of folks that want to complain about things. There's few folks that find problems with things and come with a solution, right? So if you reward that sort of behavior, right, you're going to have problem solvers. And so that's something else that we want to engender and grow amongst our young aviators, and that'll make them successful as they go on. I also tell them that as they become, even in their first squadron, very early on in naval aviation, they will be entrusted with sailors to lead them. And that is a sacred thing. And I try to impart to them how sacred that is. Parents have entrusted their children to them. And so it's hard to understand when you're young because you're, just a few years older than most of the sailors that you're entrusted to lead. But I try to tell them that. I try to impart into them to invest in those folks and to be that servant leader to them. What's keeping you from doing your job, right? For lots of times it's things at home, right? Or it's, hey, I can't get the stuff I need to do my job. Okay, well, hey, I swing a bigger bat, right? I'll go to bat for you to go get those things. And I try to teach them that by doing that, they're enabling success at the lowest level. And that's going to create a wave that's going to, what's the rising tide raises all boats, right? And so they can affect that personally just by having that mindset and having that mindset of service. So yeah, that's in a nutshell. And the one other thing that I tell them is that, got it, you're new here, you're not going to know everything. It's okay not to know things. It's not okay to not go learn the thing. So they're going to have a chief petty officer that probably knows the thing, right? Hey, chief, what's this? Okay, great. It's in what book? Okay, great. Go look at the book so that they become familiar with that, right? That's how they grow as a professional and grow so that they can take more and more positions of greater responsibility inside the Navy. So having that curious nature, finding the answers, it's okay to not know stuff. It's not okay to not go find the answer.
Nice.
Yeah.
Some really good ones there. And on a slightly more kind of direct to consumer basis, almost, if you had, I love to dress it up like this. I think it's a really, really powerful question to ask people. But if you had a minute to go back in time, speak to a young you, 12, 13 years old or something, and have a bit of a whisper in the ear, just with knowing what's up, what's coming up, what to look for, the hard times, the good times. I don't know, what would be that key bit of advice you'd want to portray to that young you that you feel like would carry you forward with, good wind in the sails?
Yeah, I've had to go back and talk to the 12-year-old me. It's having the power of perspective, right? There are many scary things that are very scary the first time you do them, and then they become routine, right? I would tell myself that to not be afraid of those things, that inside you is a capacity and an aptitude that's inside of everybody. And don't doubt yourself, right? Let others tell you no. Don't tell yourself no before you've even started. So start running, keep running. Don't be afraid of new things. You'll be surprised what you can do. I would tell them that about a career in naval aviation, that you will never wonder if it was worth it. You will live a life of purpose, and you will make the best friends of your life inside naval aviation. And I can't speak for the other parts of the military, and I'm sure that that holds true for other jobs, other parts of the profession. But I would tell myself that, and yeah, that's what I would tell him. I would tell him to believe in yourself, and I would probably tell him to study harder.
I like it. That's a good
Yeah,
one,
that's,
man.
that's one other thing I tell my students is I use the Seneca quote with them. I say, luck is the intersection of opportunity and preparedness, right? And I tell them, hey, flight school is full of opportunities. We provide you an opportunity at every flight, every simulator, every test, all those, tons of opportunities. You're in charge of the preparedness. And I tell them, you need to perform to your utmost, because if you don't perform to your utmost and you are found wanting, you're always going to wonder yourself. You're always going to have that regret in your life. Well, what if I'd worked a little bit harder? Would I have passed them? And so I tell them, work as hard as you can, because then I did everything I could, and maybe it still wasn't enough, but that's okay, because then you can move on with your life. You'll have closure on the event. If you don't, you're not going to have that closure. And so I tell them, and so I guess to your question, that's something that I tell the young version of me with every new class that checks in. Hey, don't leave anything on the table when you go to do this stuff, because you're always going to wonder. And I tell them, hey, inside of you, you're the only one that knows. You're the only one that knows. So, you got to be honest with yourself and truthful with yourself and kind of introspective. But yeah, don't leave anything on the table, because then you'll always wonder if you don't. So, yeah, that's what I tell my younger self, man.
I love it. That's some really great advice there. Thank you, man. Before we wrap this up, I've got one more question for you. It's just a bit of trivia. So I spoke a long time ago to someone who used to live at a windmill, and my first thoughts being in that location were, how the hell do you sleep there? How the hell do you focus? Because it's just constant noise of like water and noise and just mechanical things. So I got to ask, does the sound of stuff taking off, full afterburner behind you, does that ever get blocked out, or are you always feeling that rumble?
So I'll tell you two stories about this. One was my first deployment. So I fly out to USS Nimitz. I'm fresh out of the FRS, the Fleet Replacement Squadron, and I go to join VAQ 135 on the Nimitz. And in my stateroom, my bunk was directly underneath catapult 2. I could reach up and touch the catapult when I was laying down. So, as you can imagine, it was a pretty noisy place to try to sleep. And I got to where I could sleep through all the launches, right? So if I was flying the night page the night before and was up late and trying to, get some extra sleep the next day to, stay accustomed to the night page, I could get to where I could sleep through a full, wave launch in the morning. What would wake me up every morning was when they test fired the cat at 5 a.m, and it was a dry fire, and it was just a shuttle going down the cat, because it was dead silence, and then just felt like the catapult track was going to come through the overhead and land on me every morning at 5 a.m. So that would wake me up every day. The equivalent here is when the Blues are practicing, right? So the Blues practice, I'm sitting here in my office, right? In fact, it's so loud in here that the pictures on the wall, about once a week, I have to go around and straighten all of them, because they make the whole hangar vibrate. And so in their show is the sneak attack or the surprise pass that they do, right? Okay. And so there'll be a lull in the action, and I'll be sitting here typing on my computer, doing whatever. And yeah, it's happening in the background, and I don't think too much of it. The surprise pass goes right over the top of my office every time.
Oh, God.
It still makes me jump every time it happens. And every time it happens, I shake my head at the Blue Angels. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know, man. That's all I can tell you about that. That's my personal experience.
I love it. It's great. I mean, yeah, I remember First time I saw an F-16 was at Salinas Air Show a few months ago, and that sneak attack that the Thunderbirds did. Wow. I mean, the whole car park of cars, probably several hundred cars, every single one of them, their car alarm was going off. It was wicked. But yeah, I imagine it's a hell of a jump scare to not know when that's coming in an office like that. But you know what? That place, from what you've said and what I've seen, that's one of the coolest places in the world to be. And I bet you have a great time there. So last thing to do today is a shameless plug then. So anyone who's made it this far in the podcast, where do they go next then? So things that you want to promote and send people to, whether that's recruitment things or your own personal social media bits and bobs, or even if that's like a piece of work, that could be a book or a podcast or anything that you feel like would be valuable to people, or even just reading up a bit more about the wing. Yeah, just some of those promotion points there would be great to send people over to them.
Yeah, I think just in general, we're kind of at a tumultuous time in our country right now. What I would say to young people out there is that, service, no matter what the form, whether it's the military or civic service, becoming involved in your community, volunteer service, that is absolutely critical to the fabric of this nation. I encourage you to find your niche, wherever that is, and go do it. One of the great things about the military, coming from a very small town with a very limited worldview, was joining the military, meeting people from all walks of life, becoming friends with them, and gaining a much larger view of the world and the interactions of everything that makes the world go round. When I said before about you'll never wonder if it was worth it, I meant that. And I mean that for any sort of service to your fellow man or to your country. I encourage you to go do that and find what speaks to you and give of yourself to that cause, whatever that is. Me, myself, I'm nearing the end of my time in the service. It has been a fantastic ride. And I would encourage young folks out there to look into it. Look into the military. There are many, many benefits that it provides for you, some tangible, many that are intangible, that will set you up for success in life. The things that you will learn will just serve you well as you go through life. And I think that's true for any type of service. I can't speak to the rest of it. I didn't join the Peace Corps. I joined the Navy. And so I can speak to that.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, Doug, that's been a great podcast. And I just want to say I really appreciate you, your service, and everything that goes on that wing. It's great. And I support all of it. And I want to thank all of those people for their service too. But as for today, that's our episode for Talk 4. It's been an absolute honor and an absolute pleasure. Thank you for joining me for it today. It's been great.
My pleasure, Louis. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, sir. And thank you guys for listening too. This was episode 148. If you'd like to listen to the past episodes, go and have a look at the channel. If you'd like to listen in for the future ones too, make sure to hit that subscribe button and spread some love by leaving a like and a comment. See you in the next one. Good night. Cheers.